Okay, thank you so much to Fraser and to Dr. Wang. I'm going to be bringing you how movement works with fascia and how fascia works with movement, and giving you some practical ideas, hopefully. So here's this thing we're talking about, fascia, and this is a photograph from a colleague of mine taken from a dissection. And as Tina was telling us, Dr. Wang was telling us, fascia is an organ of movement and it's an organ of sensation. And it is the scaffold that holds everything in place. So it's everywhere, as we heard, from head to toe, it's everywhere, around all our organs, around all our muscles. We can't escape it, it's everywhere. So it's everywhere. And it creates relationships throughout the whole body, and it is a force transmitter. So it's designed is to help, if we stamp our foot, it's designed to help transmit that force through the whole structure. It's literally head to toe. But what is fascial-friendly movement as opposed to other types of movement? So movements or exercises that promote the health and the flexibility of the fascia. So how do we do that? Ideally, because this is head to toe, ideally we want an integrated whole body approach to our movement practice, as opposed to single joint, single body part approaches. We want to spread that force distribution through the whole structure. Fascia can help bring balance to our structure, and our movements need to help bring that balance. Fascia is really important for our proprioception. So the fascia perceives mechanical changes in the nearby muscles, and it gives information concerning movement and position of the body. So it's super, super sensitive, and it's super intelligent. Yeah? So really, really important that I believe it's really important that we're aware of fascia when we're teaching movement. And it can help with pain management, because free nerve endings are embedded in the fascia, and it responds to our environment because it is an important sensory organ. So it's responding to everything that's going on around us, how we're feeling, temperatures, all of that kind of thing. Here's our tensegrity human. So I introduced him on Thursday in the posture presentation. We were talking about biotensegrity, and Dr. Wang talked about that earlier. And so this is one of those tensegrity models. And this is really how the fascia is organized throughout our whole structure. So if you squashed this tensegrity human and pushed him down, when you let go, he would pop back up into his original balanced structure. And you can see that this is a lovely balance. Yeah, everything's nicely tensioned. So we do want tension in our structure. Tension isn't always a bad thing. We need tension within the fascia, but everything is very well organized. Fascia does not really stretch. What fascia likes to do, it likes to expand. Yeah, so we don't want to try and stretch it and force it. It wants to expand within this tensional network. So yeah, fascia expands. If we continue to try to stretch or release tight tissues, it can actually create the opposite effect, and it can actually shorten and tighten more. So the fascia, if you try and do something to it that it's not ready to do, we haven't built that tolerance, and we haven't trained it, it can perceive it as a threat, and it might start to shorten and contract. So, that's why I always talk about creating an environment of safety and trying to relax the tissues before we try and do this integrated movements. The stability of our whole structure comes from this integrated tensional network. We are all tensegrity humans. So we all have this within us. And sometimes if we have EDS, it's a little harder to find this tensional network because we like gravity to kind of push us down and we collapse a little bit. But this is definitely achievable, and this is how I work. This is how I want to promote movement with my clients. The fascia And we heard from Dr. Wang about how they discovered that there was densification in certain areas. And it may be denser in different body parts. The lumbar spine, the fascia here in your lower back, is really, really thick because, again, it's a force transmitter. It needs to be thick in those areas. And you may see, if you have seen people with the forward head posture and they start to develop this sort of lump on the back of their sort of neck down here, that can be a laying down of extra fascial tissue to protect the joint. So this is important because the fascia, I said it responds to our environment. It responds to the load that we're putting through our bodies. So if I do the same thing every day, the same pattern every day, and I don't change, my fascia is going to model itself to those movements. So if I only do exercise that turns to the left, and that's all I do, I don't look at the right, my fascia is going to model itself there. Yeah, and it's going to be very hard for me to go the other way. Yeah, so we're going to get that stiffening. Fascia loves to move in multiple directions because it's everywhere. It's literally your internal bodysuit. And tension in one part of your body could be impacting another part of the body because it's communicating through those tissues. So we're just going to do a little exercise. I've put a t-shirt experiment here, or a top. If you take, again, don't ruin your clothes, but if you take your t-shirt and you kind of bunch it up on the side, your top, whatever you're wearing, and kind of pull it in a little sort of knot down one side. And you can see here, as I do it on my t-shirt, you can see that it hasn't just affected the area where I've created the knot. You can see that there are tensional pullings. And if I kept going, this would come maybe all the way up to my opposite shoulder. Maybe it would go down. If this was a full-on bodysuit, that could be pulling on my hip. It could be pulling across the other hip. So these tensional networks can go literally everywhere. So if we have restriction in one area, it is going to be impacting another part of your body. Okay, that's why I don't like looking. When I see a patient, I'm not just looking at where they say they have the pain or the restriction. I'm trying to see the pattern. Why is that happening? Where's it coming from? Oh, hold on. Oh, it's playing already. Okay, so this is a really cool video. Hopefully we'll probably have to play it a couple of times. So this is a little experiment you can do at home. This is just cornflour and water. And you can see I've poured the liquid into the bowl, and as I put my fingers into the liquid, I can go into it nice and smoothly. It can glide, as we were hearing from Dr. Wang. But look what happens when I treat it with force. So now I'm banging the same liquid, and I couldn't go through it. But immediately afterwards, I can go back into it. How cool is that? That's really cool, right? Can we play it one more time? So here's the liquid. Just cornflour and water. So fascia is a non-Newtonian substance. That means it can be liquid and solid at the same time. And I'll tell you why I'm showing you this. But look at that. Smooth, slow manipulation. I can go in easily. I hit it with my fingers. Can you see that it's rejecting me? And if I go harder, it's rejecting me even more. But immediately after, straight back into a liquid form. So why is that important? That is telling us and showing us, thank you. Well, you can keep playing it, it's fine. We'll just stay here and look at the cornflour video. This is showing us that fascia responds to loading and force. So as Dr. Wang said, it loves loading. So I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong. If you think about it, every time I walk and I hit the ground, I'm hoping my plantar fascia is going to tighten up, because otherwise I'm going to have a jelly leg, right? So we need it to go stiff sometimes. But this is important if you think about maybe exercise, maybe manual therapies that you might be having, massage treatments. If we attack the fascia and start beating it up with a spoon and trying to pummel it, it's going to harden. It doesn't like it. But if you go in softly and gently and quietly, it will say, okay, I'll let you have a bit more movement. Yeah, I'll do that. Okay, so that's how fascia responds to movement. And it's just useful to think about that in your own movement practices. Could you be doing something or having treatments that are potentially making you a little bit stiffer when we don't want to be stiffer? Okay. So, and here is this full-on bodysuit in sort of nature. So here we've got a beautiful picture that I got from National Geographic. And can you see how the leopard is expanding from head to toe? He's got one paw still on the ground. The paw at the front near his prey, can you see how the paw has opened? So even his paw expands, and you can see that fascial tension through his whole structure. He's our tensegrity animal. When he lands on the ground, that fascia is going to contract again. He's going back to his normal state. Yeah, so we have this ability to expand and then contract. And there's me just doing a plank. Again, if we're doing exercises, again, fascia loves things like this. I know it's not going to be appropriate for everyone, and we can modify our exercises, but loading the joints is really, really good for the tissue. Again, planks, expanding in multiple directions. Yeah? So it's really interesting when we start to think about the body as this tensegrity rather than individual joints, because we often feel quite disjointed, don't we? Yeah, and we go for therapy, and they often treat us as single body parts. Yeah, when actually it would be great to be treated in this integrated way. Okay, and tensegrity, just briefly, what is it? What are we talking about? So tensegrity demonstrates the natural balance of forces, the dynamic tension network, and an integrated movement system that is applicable to all living things. And that's from a book called Biotensegrity by Graham Scarr. It's a very interesting read if you like sort of the sciencey side of things. But again, that's really how I look at my patients. That's how I teach movement. I'm always thinking of this whole body expansion. So in summary, the expansion creates the tension. So you can see he's expanded, but he's got good tension. He needs that ease of expansion to grab his prey. Tension in tensegrity actually makes us stronger and more resilient because the fascia is distributing the force throughout your whole structure. Rather than me, as I said earlier, if I stamp my foot, and I'm not allowing that healthy fascial movement, am I going to start hurting my ankle or my knee? Where is the force going? Because the force is going somewhere. And so we better teach it to distribute itself. Tensional internal support, weirdly, because if we think tension, we think, oh, that must be bad. But if you can feel that in your body, it actually allows us to relax within the tensional network. So it's really cool. So we feel more relaxed and we feel stronger. So relaxing into this tensional network becomes a redistribution of tension through the whole system. So rather than putting all our tension in our shoulders and holding our shoulders here, and we all do it, I do it, we can start to let that force be distributed through all the tissues. Relax, therefore, we often think relax means we're going to collapse, but actually, when you're working with biotensegrity, relax doesn't mean collapse at all. It means you can actually be with yourself at ease in your tissues. So what does fascia do in movement? As we saw from the video, it doesn't like to be forced or pushed into doing movements it's not ready for. That's why I'm not a huge fan of go and do 30 sets of 10 reps 3 times a day, or lots of repetitions. If I haven't trained and I'm not ready, I haven't got the tolerance for that, my fascia is going to tell me, and it's going to be quite angry and sore the next day. It can actually start to contract, we said that earlier, if your nervous system feels unsafe. Fascia likes to feel safe, yeah? So building that environment of safety is very key. That's why I always work on breath and relaxation first. And some of you would have come to our fascia workshops over these 3 days. We were looking at the breath and how that integrates into our movement. It's our biggest sensory organ. It responds to mental and physical stresses. So fascia is listening to everything that's going on in our head. It likes to have time to respond. It doesn't want to be beaten up. Be patient. Yeah, some of us will adapt and change quicker than other people, but it's going to be quiet. Fascia is going to expand quietly. And so how do we start training it? Slow, gentle movements within a range of motion that is safe and comfortable. So we're not going big ranges to begin with. We're not forcing. We're not hyperextending. We're going slow and low. And then as you start to get more at ease, you have more freedom, you can gradually start to increase your range of motion as you can tolerate it and control it. And then you can start to make your movements more dynamic and more expansive. But we want to get that good foundation before we start doing big, expansive movements. And really, the least amount of muscular effort is key. We don't need to force and push and squeeze and all of those words that put more tension, the bad tension in our body. So less is really more. Movement is really essential. It keeps the fascia hydrated. So when you wake up in the morning, have you ever done it when you've been at work or school? You don't do any movement, you go to bed and you sleep and you get up the next day and you're like, oh, I feel really stiff. But you go to work or school and you don't do any movement and you come back and you go to bed. You wake up the next day, you're like, oh, I feel even stiffer. What's happening here is the fascia is getting dehydrated and it's losing the glide that Dr. Wang was talking about. So movement is the best way of hydrating that fascia. So we need to move. It reduces the feeling of stiffness. We were talking about the patterns. Yeah, it will lay down patterns if we only do the same thing over and over again. And we talked about the force being transferred. And it really is a strong integrated system. And when we start to access it, we can feel really connected and strong. We were hearing from Dr. Burling about prolotherapy. And sometimes, yeah, we do get injuries. There are things that can injure and damage the fascia. We might have a trauma. So these are things that, we've tried everything, and sometimes we do need some intervention, maybe like the prolotherapy. So trauma, overuse, repetitive strain, the carpal tunnel injuries, all of that kind of thing. Poor biomechanics and movement patterns. If I'm doing the same thing or I'm, not moving correctly, I might start to cause soft tissue injuries. Muscle imbalances, obviously high impact sports or excessive stretching. That could cause us a damage to our fascia. Autoimmune disorders, they can also be impacting the fascial tissue, and aging, the elasticity can start to decrease. So working with our fascia can create a fascial body. So I'm just going to leave you with this little quote. The optimal fascial body is both elastic and resilient, and it can therefore be relied upon to respond effectively in a variety of challenges and circumstances, providing a high degree of injury prevention. Okay, and that's what we want, right? Injury prevention and that elasticity. And that's something I believe we kind of lack, is that expansive elasticity. And here's me doing a few exercises. You see I'm moving in lots of different ways. I'm doing some side bends, I'm doing some flexion, I'm doing some expansion. I like to do lots of different things in different directions to keep my fascia happy and moving easily in multiple ways. Thank you so much for your time, and I will pass on.